Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hop-Ons podcast, a community review podcast sponsored by our Patreon supporters. My name is Colin Cox.
My name is John Phelps. I've just noticed I'm wearing this new CM Punk shirt I have is red, and the camera and the lights wash me out so I look as though I have some type of disease from the early 20s. I look like I have a fisherman who has been at sea for a long time.
Yeah, you look sunburnt as well, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I'm not. That is just the shirt and I'm always ruddy, but that is. I always look like a sort of a drunk that would get thrown out of a bar. That's the look I go for. I love having skin. I had acne the other day. I'm 40, really? And so that happened.
Yeah, I think acne happens to everyone. I don't think you should feel.
I don't like it. I wish it would not happen anymore.
Yeah, that's
is what I'll say, Colin. This is the John and Colin Colgate Health Hour. Welcome.
Have you tried exfoliating? I don't know.
Yeah,
if that's
I know. I don't exfoliate. I do use like a face wash.
Okay.
Every day on my terrible skin. So it feels smooth, but looks just awful. Like I've been in that movie, The Revenant, forever.
Post-bear attack. Yeah. Always.
Yeah. That's me.
Everyone thinks you're doing a costume that you're just really, really in.
No, I'm like, please stop. It's not. It's me. It's me. Anyway, we're not here to talk about my terrible skin. We're here to talk about an episode of the television show Community.
John, before we do that, surprise, we have a new patron.
Jesus, he just drops it on me. Is it Joseph Robinette Biden, perhaps?
No, it's not. It's not Joe Biden. No, John, much like the bear from The Revenant, this new patron has really surprised you. Welcome, Anthony, to the podcast.
Anthony Mackie. Oh, Captain America's a big fan of the show. Thank you, Anthony Mackie. I loved you in Pain and Gain, an underrated film directed by Michael Bay. I highly recommend that.
I don't think I've seen this movie. Yeah, so Anthony...
It's a true story.
True story.
Anthony could tell you about it. It's a great film. Pain and Gain. Yeah. Recommend it. 10 out of 10.
Post about it on Patreon, Anthony. But Anthony, welcome.
Yes.
Welcome.
Is he a free patron? Is he a new free patron?
No, John. He's giving us monetary compensation for
Anthony
his Patreon, for his Patreon subscription. And John, you know,
Tony, hey, how you doing? Fucking Tony's come in the room. How you doing there, Tony? Appreciate you, Tony. Anthony Soprano. Oh, fascinating.
I can't get him to stop. No, John, I've been thinking about this because you may have noticed a dramatic increase in the amount of Patreon support. Now, one could conclude this is because listeners know that we are ending the podcast and they want to offer support, or this is in direct response to my more liberal approach to incorporating music into the podcast. So this is what I choose to think the latter, not the former. So get ready, kids, because this episode, it'll be more just weird music references than it is John and I talking.
I think it's the former. I'm just going to put that into the record so that the court can read it back to us when we get sued by Pitbull. I just want that to be known.
I think you're wrong. Cue music that has the word wrong in it. Wrong! Wrong! I hope you enjoyed that. John, we are here to discuss Season 6, Episode 10 of Community, Basic RV Repair and Palmistry. John, this episode originally aired on May the 12th, 2015, directed by J. Chandra Sekhar, written by Dan... Is it Guterman?
Guterman sounds good to me.
We've already done this once before.
That's his political campaign. Guterman sounds good to me. And he winks at the camera.
Guterman's gubernatorial race. I couldn't think of a third G, so sorry. John, this is your IMDb plot summary. While on a road trip to get rid of a Greendale artifact, Abed turns a situation into a feature film. I know that's not.
That's
a lot of
very
that is
bad.
wrong. Yeah,
that's a real bad one. Yeah.
How how
that's a failure.
Yeah, you're reading it with me because it's on the shared Google Doc. How much of this is wrong? I mean, how, because I think at least 70% of it is wrong.
While on a road trip to get rid of a Greendale artifact, that's wrong. Abed turns a situation into a feature film. That's all wrong. The whole last half of that is wrong. Actually, he's not even talking about, well, I guess kind of, it doesn't matter. Can we do the Barker bite? Because we have to talk about this episode.
John, I would love to know
hop
what you
into
think
it.
of this episode. So now it's time.
Yes.
John, it's time for Barker Bait.
This biggity boy's a diggity dog.
Everybody hide your dogs while he plays the song. Because they'll go
I might
fucking
play it twice.
nuts.
3
Please don't.
times for your animals.
No, don't do it. Mr. Worldwide is not happy. Okay. I have watched this episode 4 times.
Oh my.
I don't remember anything that happened in this episode.
Oh,
so
wow.
this should be a pretty good
Fantastic,
a
yeah.
pretty good time. So I guess that's a bark. I didn't think it was that good. There's a moment in it that I laughed a lot, and I bet it's the moment you would laugh a lot too, and it's when in the future we see Britta and the face she's doing is really fucking great.
Yeah,
It's fucking hilarious. And then when she does the arm
the
pump,
fist pumping.
I laughed a lot at that, and I laughed a lot. The Dean early on, before he goes really off the rails, has some very funny lines. When the Dean's like, "You're just trying to make it sound stupid," was really great after saying the dumbest thing in the universe. Elroy's great. Elroy is a shining light in this episode. He gets to do a lot of great work. And I love him, but I think I found everyone else pretty unbearable, is
Okay.
what I will say. In
Even
this episode.
Abed?
Abed's fine. I think the flashback thing got really old. I get what he's doing, but I think we are past this as a character for him. We are 6 seasons deep, and he is still doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And so much so that I think even the show realized that, because early on, Jeff and Abed get into a bit of a tiff, and then immediately Jeff is like, "You have to come back because we can't do this." And I thought, okay, well, they even are recognizing this is quite silly. And I don't know. I think I didn't feel any heft to it. I like the Frankie moment. I mean, I think that's the moment that is a shining moment in the episode, when she sort of understands Abed, and I think that akins itself to, I think she talked about maybe having a sister, someone that maybe had a learning disability of some type, and so she's able to communicate with people better than most, and I think she does a fine job at displaying that here. She also has to talk to the Dean every day, so she gets how to talk to people differently, so they'll listen. But I think the episode, it was just straight down the line. I did not really care that much one way or the other. It wasn't offensive to me, but it also was rather forgettable, obviously. So that's what I'll say.
So, John, can you tell me, what are the restraints that people put on maybe dogs who have biting compulsions? Maybe if they need a to be groomed or something.
Oh, we use bark. They're like it's like a shock collar. It's like a bark collar is what you
Okay,
call it.
I'm thinking of actually something that might cover their mouth to actually keep them from biting you.
Like a what's it called? A
Yeah.
muzzle. It's a muzzle.
A
Yeah.
muzzle. Okay. I think this episode bites, but it has a muzzle, which is to say it's not really getting into the flesh. I guess, what am I really saying? It's fine. I think there's attempts at biting. I just don't know. Like, I think I agree with you. I really like this point you made, that it feels like the show should be beyond this for Abed. Now, we'll talk about this as a bottle episode, right? But here's something else I was thinking about, and correct me if I'm wrong. Of all of the interesting genre work and genre homages that this show has done, have they ever done a road trip?
Sort of, yeah. The wasn't like the spaceship trip kind of a road trip one.
The Kentucky Fried Chicken
Yeah.
RV
Yeah.
thing? Okay. that's about as close as they've gotten, right? To doing a road trip.
Yeah,
And I don't
I
even
would
know.
never call
Yeah, go
this
ahead.
like in the
Yeah,
road trip genre, right? Because they're not seeing anything, they're not stopping anywhere. You know,
sure.
the exposition puts them in like a scenic overlook for the evening because they can't go anywhere because the budget wouldn't allow it, and the show's 27 minutes long. So this is about as far as we get compared. I mean, I guess I compare it to the KFC one, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's because here's what I was thinking. So I was thinking, okay, so why might the show have, or why might not the show, but why might Abed have some anxiety about a road trip narrative? And I wonder if some of it, John, is because when I think about the road trip genre, I fundamentally think about a genre where it feels like so much is completely out of control and there's a lack of predictability. And maybe you could argue with any good narrative there's obviously a lack of predictability. Maybe surprise is an important part of any good story, but I think in particular the road trip genre, a necessary part of the genre is things happening that characters would never even predict or anticipate would happen. Maybe this is where we can start. Is it possible that this is something that might create a bit of anxiety for a character like Abed, which might help to explain why he's attempting to exercise so much control? Because this is a genre that has, I mean, he's right, it's a genre that has distinct narrative beats, there are obvious narrative trappings, but it's also a genre that I would argue is predicated on just wildly unpredictable things happening. And so maybe that's a reason to explain why he's doing this thing that it feels like maybe he should be beyond at this point in the show. It has less to do with the placement of this episode and more to do with the genre as he understands it that this episode is to some degree paying homage to.
Yeah, and I can't argue with that. I mean, I think that's a good point. That's a good way to put it. I think it is. I think it's overplayed. I think it's overstayed its welcome as a way to do things with Abed. And I get that's just a character and his trait, but we've seen it like a lot, a lot, and it it does make sense that he would sort of use this device considering what the show is trying to achieve narratively as far as like what the episode itself is trying to do. I just wasn't a big fan of it, but yes, I agree with you fully.
So, is there any new territory for this character at all? Because I think something, when you and I, for example, when we spoke about a character like Tobias, I think one of the reasons why we thought Tobias maybe didn't work so well in subsequent seasons after maybe those first one or two seasons is because there's no maybe growth, there's no direction to take this character. In a lot of ways, he was a rudderless, directionless character. Abed, I think, is a more interesting character than Tobias. I think they obviously do more with Abed than a show like Arrested Development did with Tobias, but I'm curious, is this it? Have we reached a kind of telos with this character where there's nothing to do with him? Nothing at all. Nothing new to do with this character.
Fascinating. I wouldn't say there's nothing new to it. I think there are episodes where he uses this to sort of like this bombastic comedic effect, and I think that's new. That's new for him. But maybe maybe we've hit sort of the peak of what Abed is capable of as a character. We're at the end of the show, so it's not the worst thing in the world, but it is tried and it is just boring at this point. Mm-hmm. And I felt like a lot of the characters in this episode, not just Abed, a lot of the characters in this episode were just doing like the stereotypical character things they do. Britta just smokes weed the whole time and does really stupid things. Annie is a source of like sexualized something. I'm not sure what's happening there, but it's uncomfortable. Jeff is being loud leader asshole guy. So much so that he's even talking over Elroy and trying to say, I know better than Elroy does about Elroy's RV, when Jeff knows nothing about his RV. So I think we're at the point where they've just run out of things to do. I mean, when you think of the overall plot of this episode, that's very apparent. What can we do with them? We put them in a car. We put them in Elroy's RV. They're going cross country. Why? There's a big hand. I mean, that is so silly. But within the confines of the Dean as a character, it makes sense. This is something he would do.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah,
I think they're all just sort of getting a bit lazy at this point, is how I feel.
The characters are the
the characters.
Okay,
the characters.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, this is a bottle episode, which we should discuss because I think all bottle episodes are often predicated on something this silly and this trivial. You've mentioned the Seinfeld Chinese restaurant. They're waiting for a reservation. That's it. I mean, I cannot think of anything less inspired than waiting for a reservation. Even in Community, right? It's well, who has Annie's pen, right? It's the again, something that is so ubiquitous, something that should cause very little to no tension, creates all of this tension. I think what's interesting about this is how this is not one of those common ubiquitous things or experiences. This is the dean bought a giant novelty hand using school funds, and because it was so expensive, they needed to sell it. Frankie found someone to buy it, and that's why this bottle episode, if we wanted to call it that, and I think maybe it is fair to call it that, this is why this bottle episode exists. And so I think in that way, this almost feels like the show, I don't necessarily know if it's commenting on the bottle episode itself, but this doesn't feel like this doesn't feel like the kind of conceit that would then produce a bottle episode, because as you said, this is wild and unexpected and well, unexpected in a way that is inconsistent with how I often think of the bottle episode. And so I wonder, but then I think this idea of using a hand, like everything from the restaurant reservation to the pen, I mean, these are really all just MacGuffins, right? And so I wonder if the point of the hand is, can we make the MacGuffin as absurdly as absurd of a MacGuffin as possible, and the only way to do that is to make it a giant novelty hand. Like, who would ever have, like, even at the end of the episode, right? I think you would really like the bumpers. The guy who wants to buy the giant novelty hand did it because he likes buying giant novelty items, and his son disappeared with a giant novelty kite. And that's the kind of person who would think to buy a giant novelty hand. So I like doing yet another bottle episode, but we can talk about this. I'm not convinced this does what I ultimately think a bottle episode should do, but I'm prepared to be wrong about that, because I think I might be. Like, this is one of those episodes, John, I must tell you that it's a bit confounding to me, because I want to like elements of this episode, and I feel like there's something I'm missing that I can't put words to. But I don't want to just dismiss the idea that my instincts are wrong. I think there's something here.
Well, and I feel the same way. And for me, and I could be sounding like a complete ass. What's new? But I think from the beginning of the episode, when it starts to just subvert all these expectations, it loses me. And I don't have any problem with telling like a uniquely new story. I think that's fine. But whenever I'm watching something and it goes to a 3 weeks earlier, as soon as that happens, as a viewer, you want to try to put the pieces together. You want to try to connect all the dots to how did they get in this situation. And that's a fun thing to do when you're watching episodes like this. But they immediately go past that into something else. And so we go back to this moment over and over and over. And by the end of it actually happening, there's no weight to it. It's just Abed spouting off this nonsense and also making you think, did this happen, or is this all in Abed's brain from the outset? Because it could go either way. And so like I didn't necessarily enjoy that. And then there's also moments when, for example, when the hand falls off the RV. Okay, so what I wanted to happen in my brain was the hand's on the Dean, they'll all give the dean a hand, quote unquote, to get him out from under the RV, or the hand, excuse me, and then the lesson will be learned and we'll go on from there. And I thought, well, that could be fun. That's an interesting way. That's me writing the story in my brain, but then they subvert it again, and no, the dean actually runs in and is just a total asshole to these people. And so maybe it's just me as like a viewer. I've become boring, and so like that just made me not really care that much about the episode, because it just kept happening. It just kept going, look over there, and they would do something else. And in that way, like it doesn't feel like this episode wants us to feel. That's just my vibe from it.
Yeah, well, I think that's perhaps because it's far less interested in allowing you to feel anything and far more interested in having this conversation about how we tell stories, what's required of a story, and even the way we fashion stories. So Abed, he's quite consistent, John, throughout the episode that they've started the story in the wrong place. That to really begin this story, they should start it by deciding to take the trip. And so what Abed's really suggesting is all of the sequencing is off. And it's this sense, John, that he feels something. He feels like there's something wrong here. There's something wrong happening within these confines. But it's interesting how he actually mistakes what's the wrong feeling, because he seems to think and suggest the wrong feeling is the sequencing of events in the narrative itself, instead of what I think is more interesting, the conversation this episode wants to have about apologizing, and how apologizing is a necessary part of, well, not just being a good person, but being a good friend, and I think far too often, and I think you see in this episode, John, like just how awful the dean is at being accountable for himself, how bad he is at actually apologizing. So it feels like, again, what Abed feels and this narrative mapping that he wants to do, his instincts are right. He's just wrong about what the problem is. And so he thinks the problem is, well, we have sequenced events incorrectly, and what I need to do is do all of this flashing back so that I can correct the narrative, instead of thinking, well, no, what instead needs to happen is we need to have a more deliberate and forceful conversation about everything from grace to patience to apologizing correctly, to knowing how to apologize correctly, to being accountable for yourself when you make mistakes. I think that's what's really interesting, is how what Abed searches for is something that maybe he only finds by realizing that he needs to flash back to this moment, instead of needing to flash back and correct any and all like narrative sequencing mistakes. But also, John, it does this interesting thing where by saying what Frankie does, she really shifts in a lot of ways the genre of this episode. This is not a road trip episode. This is a pre-apocalyptic episode. And that's really interesting too, is just by shifting the sequencing ever so slightly, we've actually shifted the genre in a fascinating way. And that's why, like, the things that I want to talk about with this episode are really the conversation it seems to want to have about, again, apologizing and accountability. But Abed, I think, misses that, because I don't get the sense that, like, in a road trip movie, the goal is to have conversations about apologies and accountability. It's about something else, right? But I think, I don't know, like, maybe I'm wrong about apocalyptic films, but I do think the best kinds of apocalyptic movies really ask you to think about questions of accountability in interesting ways.
Yeah, it's interesting when you say that, because I, as someone who's like adamant into storytelling and film, and you'll know this too, there many directors have stated, like, if you really want to grab the audience, start the film with a scene that needs a question answered. A great one, we were just before we started recording talking about Goodfellas, and the opening scene in Goodfellas is it just opens on this car driving late at night, swerving all over the place. You hear something hitting the trunk gets popped, and then you see Joe Pesci stab this dude in the trunk, and then the guy in the trunk gets shot by De Niro like 3 times. That's how the movie starts. So as a viewer, you're thinking, how in the fuck did we get here? And it's not necessarily told through flashback. It's told through we lead up to this point in a story. And so Abed, as a film buff, would know that the best kind of stories really does start with something like this. We don't need this like big full grand exposition to get us on the road trip. Why are we on? I would love to know why we're on the road trip and explain that to me through dialogue, which they do. I like your idea a lot more at road trip films. The ones I think of, the movie Road Trip is one that pops in my brain, starring Tom Green as a great comedic actor. Is one of the silliest movies of all time. So like randomly crazy things happen in classic road trip films, and I think you're right. I think maybe Abed is wondering, why isn't that happening, and why are we all mad at each other? And that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, because again, like he, understandably so, mistakes he mistakes an apocalyptic story or a pre-apocalyptic story for a road trip film. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, another great road trip movie.
Yeah, but that also does deal with this serious aspect too, and that's like when the film starts to really get great. I mean, it's really funny, but also is very humanistic, and that's what makes John Landis made the thing. That's why it's so good. He's just so good at making humans be humanistic to one another, and I think that's what's missing here.
Yeah.
So if we had a whole episode of people just bearing their soul, that's not a very funny thing, but it's something that is a necessity at some points.
Yeah, but I think we do get bits of that, and I agree. This episode, much like Goodfellas, begins in medias res, and one of the reasons. So like just to build on what you said, one of the reasons why I like stories that begin in medias res is because that reminds everyone of the importance of gaps in narratives and how narratives that center on those gaps, they leave audiences and maybe readers at times, because this isn't exclusive to, film and television. It leaves an audience to really grapple with the unknowability of so much, but also it's so animating, right? I mean, when there's a gap in the narrative, you as the audience or the reader just have so many questions. And I think you and I both know this. One of the reasons why I don't like prequels as a genre is because I don't think there is a necessity to answer all of those questions or to fill all of those gaps. And I think this episode beautifully understands that point, that stories need gaps, they need holes, they need things to remain unanswered. And a lot of this episode is left and rendered unanswered in the best kind of way. So I just wanted to say that as well, as a way of complimenting what you said about beginning stories in the middle of something, because they're the best kinds of stories.
Yeah, they're fascinating. When I go to a play, like a live show, and it starts with like, if it like lights up and there's like a trunk in the middle of the stage and like the trunk starts moving because someone's in it, immediately as a viewer you're fucking hooked. You're like, oh my god, what has happened to put this person in a trunk? That's what I want to know. I don't need to get all this shit to get up to it. That's where we've lost a lot of filmmaking these days, is we get so into explaining fucking everything. Just let it go. I don't need to know all this. Just let it rip, man. Just show me some stuff. Nobody needs to know like what the Force is in Star Wars. It's just a thing. That's cool. Yeah. Let's keep going. So I really like your take on the episode, but I do think still, though, it is a bit of a mean episode. And maybe that's why I don't like it as much, is because Jeff in particular and the Dean are quite mean in this episode, and I don't really like to see that. I don't like to see that when I watch TV.
I mean, we can talk about the Dean in particular and we'll talk about Jeff, because I think you could argue his anger and his frustration, it's because of Abed and all this meta work that we see Abed indulge in. But John, the Dean, he seems incapable of both apologizing the way that I think people should apologize. I'm rarely someone who is prescriptive, but I think, there's a right and a wrong way to apologize. And he's also just incapable of taking accountability
Sure.
for anything that he does. And while I agree with you, I think there are these moments when characters are surly and perhaps not their best selves. There are these wonderful moments when they seem to take a kind of accountability for the things they do. Maybe, Annie has this moment when she says, "I'm kind of nailing it in this episode," which I mean, sure, maybe there's nothing for her to account for, but the Dean in particular, his unwillingness to be accountable for what he does. I'm curious to know what you think about this, because again, I think this is something that the episode wants us to imagine. It's more than just this episode. It's as if this is a kind of thesis statement for this character, that he's not a character who's good at taking or assuming accountability for his mistakes. And I didn't know if you thought that was accurate or not.
Yeah, he's super obtuse in this episode. The Dean is a deeply disturbed's not the word. He's an individual that has a lot of internal issues that he needs to work on and always has needed to work on. And I think more and more we see that seep out in this pure panic of what he does and how he does things and how he just lashes out. And here, so much so, as you were talking about him apologizing, he literally just says, "Sorry, I'm a bad Dean." And that has nothing to do with what is happening right now. And I think the Dean is somebody who needs a lot of therapy and a lot of mental health help, and needs to really dive in and see who he is as a person. And that, I think, just bubbles up into these extraordinarily insane compulsions that he gets. I understand getting hyperfixated on things. I have ADHD. It's bonkers. But you still, you're aware of that. And you can, I think, and you should as an adult say, "I'm sorry that I completely fucked this up. How do we fix this situation?" I think this is in character for the Dean, but it's hit like the precipice, and I don't want to see it go farther. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And we've seen him apologize, I think maybe correctly, earlier this season in the Karate Kid episode. But again, notice how things reach this extreme before he actually feels the impulse to apologize. I think what we're seeing here, John, that impulse to say, "I'm sorry, I'm a bad Dean," I think for you and I as well, this feels like deeply manipulative behavior. This like self-flagellating as a way of not assuming responsibility for your mistakes, because for whatever reason he wanted to buy this hand. I think we can all agree, and the characters seem to agree as well, that this was not a good decision. This was not a good use of time, money, resources. You should acknowledge that and apologize, even if you had the best of intentions. It's still, I think, important to apologize, even if you have the best of intentions, for whatever you do that might transpire from even those best intentions. You can say something like, "I'm sorry, even though I had the best of intentions, I can see that it caused problems, and I want to acknowledge that, and I want to apologize," and so on and so forth. And I think, John, what it leaves me to think is the Dean is far more intelligent and aware than maybe he wants to seem, but also just how deeply, as you said, like troubled and manipulative this character is, I think is it's troubling, because there does seem to be this lack of accountability that we're seeing culminate here. And I think back to everything from like how, I'm sorry, like sexually abusive he is towards
Oh,
Jeff
yeah.
at
Yeah,
times.
it's awful. Yeah.
The way he misallocates and misappropriates resources, and how he seems to know and understand this about himself, but he's constantly hiding behind this rhetorical move, I'm a bad dean, which does the work of shielding him from any real accountability.
Yeah, there's a moment, and one of my favorite films in my youth. It still is a banger. Is High Fidelity. I love that movie.
Oh, yeah, that's a fantastic comp. I know exactly what you mean. You can explain it, but I know
Yeah,
exactly what you mean. That's really
There's a
good.
great moment in this movie after Rob, the main character, his wife, ex-wife now, her dad has died, and he is at the funeral, and he sees his friend played by Joan Cusack, and she's like, you really should apologize, and he's like, I can say I'm sorry all day long, I can say I'm the worst, I can do this, but you know what, eventually I have to stand up for myself, I don't want to say I'm sorry that much. And she just looks at him and she says, I think just saying it the one time would suffice. And I've always thought about that, and I've always thought about people that do this whole thing where they pull this like pure pity on myself. All you have to do, genuine, and then he does. He goes to Laura and literally just says, I'm sorry. And I think that encompasses a lot of what needs to be said. And if the dean, I think, had done that from the outset, most of this episode would not have happened. And I always think about that. Whenever I'm dealing with a situation like this, I think that's super important, because you can say things to make yourself feel better, but really you need to say like the one thing to make the other people realize that you genuinely do feel bad about this.
Yeah, and that's Rob's problem in High Fidelity, is that he's so, we use the word narcissism a lot. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not clinically diagnosing this person. He seems so incredibly narcissistic that he's incapable of seeing how his immaturity and his inability to apologize and again really account for the things he does makes him such a wildly incompatible person with anyone who would dare to have a romantic relationship with him. And I think the dean is quite similar at times. He fails to see and understand how your unwillingness to be accountable for just the mistakes you make makes you this like deeply incompatible person. You wonder why no one really wants to spend time with you, or you wonder why people constantly exclude you. I think Chang is quite similar in this way at times, that your unwillingness to be accountable is this thing that creates a barrier between you and the people you ultimately want to be close to. But I think, John, what's fascinating and maybe deeply and even tragically ironic is this sense that the dean seems to extract so much enjoyment from seeing and thinking of himself as someone who is just unlikable for reasons that he cannot understand, instead of seeing and understanding that, no, it's just like, yeah, account for your mistakes, instead of wanting to constantly cast yourself as a kind of victim or a figure of exclusion, because that's something he likes to do as well, right? Instead of seeing himself, like, instead of making like the move, I'm teaching this play Oedipus the King in one of my classes, and that play, it's really a play that has this narrative trajectory where this character needs to understand that they're the problem, that the problem isn't anything and everyone else, but it's really, I'm the problem, it's me, right? It's like the Taylor Swift move, right? I'm the problem, it's me. The dean seems incapable of doing this. This is Rob's trajectory in High Fidelity, finally realizing, okay, I think it's me. Like, I'm kind of the problem.
I'm the
here.
denominator in these situations.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really nice comparison. And I don't know, like, does the dean, because you've watched this episode 4 times now, so you should know.
I have.
Would you say, like, does the dean have a moment of awareness that's similar to the moment of awareness that Rob has in High Fidelity.
Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously it's when Abed does his speech about what a hand can represent. I think that's the moment that Dean realizes that he maybe has gone too far and needs to reel it in a little bit. But I think that's it. I don't think it's overly emotional like Rob's is, but I think it is something that he does open the door and say sorry, I think. But the audacity of this man to say, I forgive you all at the beginning of this episode made me hate him so much. So much.
Well, listen, we don't need to talk about this too much. I think it's probably because he sounded a lot like our mothers in that moment.
Oh, yeah. You're probably not wrong. Speaking of I don't want to get into it, but let's just say she has a lot of Dean-like tendencies.
A lot of Dean-like tendencies. Yeah, no, I agree. We can talk about Abed as well, and this thing Frankie says where she encourages him to reconsider. Well, you're not. Don't imagine that you're flashing back to correct this moment, but you are flashing back to this moment because and he feels. I mean, so I've John over the last 2 weeks just been enamored with like mid-90s X-Men content because of X-Men 97. You get a lot of like Cable time traveling stuff happening here. My apologies to anyone who doesn't like X-Men, but this idea that like, no, you're flashing back to this moment to fix something which will prevent something catastrophic from happening in the future. I don't know. I like that because I think it also maybe asks us to reconsider or reconceptualize or rethink like, well, what's the point of all of this flashing back? It's not to fix something so that this particular moment is better, but it's no, this moment is the pivotal moment to prevent something disastrous that we haven't actually seen before. And again, this rethinking or reconceptualizing and perhaps even shifting of genres and like what kind of story this ultimately is. Again, this is not a road trip episode. This is, if we're lucky, the prevention of a post-apocalyptic story. And that's really interesting to me. I guess in that way, like this episode feels like the second Terminator film.
Oh my God. What a flick. What a movie.
Pretty cool movie. Yeah.
I think what I like about that whole, and I genuinely love more than anything. Number one, that Abed is just so smart on his toes, so quick on his feet to come up with that, and really know what it's going to take to solve this. There are moments in the episode I think could have been very brilliant if they had gone down certain paths. When Abed flashes back to imagine the thick straps on the top of the RV. Mm-hmm. I thought that if he goes back into like present day and they're there, that makes me change completely like how I feel about this episode. I thought that would have been so fucking cool if they'd done that.
Okay.
But they go a different way. And I think truly what shines in this episode is how much Frankie is able to understand the dynamic of these human beings and speak to them how they should be spoken to. She immediately, and she's great. That's a really great moment when she realizes that Abed can save us because he is the smartest here, most likely. And that in order for me to get him in the present, I have to think like he would think. And so, it's her idea to say, Abed, you're actually in the flashback now. What do we do to save this moment? And that's just like a hugely wonderful moment of humanity. Even though it does go into this wild sort of futuristic vision with them wearing these insane wigs and then Britta doing whatever it is Britta's doing, which is fantastic stuff. It's still a very personable very human moment. And I think the show does truly shine when it hits those. There's not a lot of them. There's a handful that just really show what this show is capable of, and I think this is one of them. It's not in the best episode, but I think it goes a long way at showing the compassion that the characters have for each other.
Yeah. Well, because I think it's also like an interesting reminder that you can't change the past to affect the future, but you can make decisions in whatever we want to conversationally call the present to prevent certain futures from occurring. And I think that's, yeah, because I like, how many of us don't fantasize about the possibility of time travel doing something in the past which would then prevent something catastrophic from happening in the present? But I think we all understand that's just a fantasy. That's not real. That can't happen. But what you can do is say things, assume responsibility, be accountable now, and by doing that, you prevent certain catastrophic futures from happening. This is why, like, the older I get and the more I think about questions of accountability and apologizing the right way, what I really think is, sure, I'm assuming responsibility for things I've done. Whether I intended to do those things or not is irrelevant. But what I like about it is how I'm preventing catastrophic futures from occurring. I can't do anything to really change how we arrived in this moment. But you know what I can do? I can prevent an apocalyptic future. And that's what I think is really interesting about what this episode does by perpetually thinking or laboring on past mistakes. Like, sure, that's important because, you know, in theory you can learn from that, but really it's, well, what can I do in this moment to prevent something catastrophic from happening? And I like how the episode really seems to hang its hat or plant its flag in that territory, that we can't change this moment, but we can prevent terrible moments from happening in the future. And maybe that is a sign of, I don't know, emotional and intellectual maturity, which it feels like that's where the show, it's been driving to this in a lot of ways. Like how can we be better people? What does it mean to be a better person? And I guess for Abed, like all of this meta work, it's not returning to the past to change the present. It's doing meaningful things in the present to prevent horrifying futures. And that's, I don't know, I think I dig that. Maybe that's the thing I was searching for in my attempts to understand this episode is how it engages with past, present, and future. That's really nice.
Have you seen X-Men Days of Future Past?
John, have I? I was thinking about that movie today.
What a flick. What a flick.
Great flick. Great fucking flick.
Movie. Great fucking movie. J. Law shows up, brings her A game. Jennifer Lawrence as
I was thinking of J-Lo for
Mystique. J-Lo. J-Law. I threw you a curveball.
You did.
Great movie. That's good. That's a good companion piece to this episode. Go watch.
Yeah.
X-Men Days of Future. Also watch X-Men 97. Holy cannoli. What a show. What a show. It's so good.
Hicks and I were talking about it because as we're recording this, I just released a Cluttered Desk episode. What's the thing Magneto says in episode 2? Don't make me disappoint you. That's fucking poetry, man. That's fantastic. Holy shit.
Have you ever been in an RV, Colin?
Oh, have I? Not to my knowledge. Not really.
That's
I don't
weird.
think so.
Not to my knowledge is the fucking weirdest thing you could have answered that question with. You woke up in an RV and went back and got knocked back out. Then you were in your bed. I don't know what happened. I think I was in an RV last night.
Yeah.
Not to my knowledge. I haven't either. That's the thing when you hit a certain age, you there's two roads you go down. One is like the Silver Fox road where you get into stocks and stuff, and the other road is you get a camper. I just don't know. I don't know which road I'm on right now. I hope it's
Well,
not Camper Road, but I think
I think
it's
we
gonna
clearly
be.
need to make decisions, and we need to say and do things to prevent that terrible apocalyptic future from occurring.
Getting a camper, I can't do it. I can't do
Yeah.
it. The people that here's the thing. A camper is the wildest way to camp. You just take a whole house and you park it somewhere and you go sit outside until you don't like bugs anymore. And then you watch Netflix and go to sleep in your bed. And then you go home and go, I had a great weekend camping. That is not camping. You're in a house somewhere. You're just you're housing.
It's pretty wild. It's yeah, I won't take clothes and put them in a bag and stay in a house
Right.
that someone like built
Yeah.
as a structure that doesn't move. I'll just like in the most inconvenient way possible just carry a house around.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
I don't know if people that are listening that are international or maybe younger don't. It's such a very strange thing that happens where we live. It is just people. I mean, people our age I know have already bought a camper, and I thought, what are you doing? That is insanity to me. And they're like,
Are these
love the
people
camper.
I know? Are these
No,
people I know?
I don't
Okay.
think so.
'Cause
But
I was just, you know what I was doing? I was thinking, who the fuck would it be? And I landed on one person, but I won't say their name.
out of the people we know, I don't know. I feel like I would be the closest, but no, I can't do it.
You
I
have
hate
nowhere to put
camping.
your
I hate the
figurines.
outdoors. That's not
No,
for me.
I wouldn't.
That's not
yeah,
who I am.
see, that's what no, John, I was thinking like you were the last person because I was thinking he doesn't like being outside. Where will he put all of his toys? So no,
Exactly.
it doesn't make any.
Exactly. I don't like nature. It's the worst. Go away. The
Yeah, I
sun
mean,
will burn
listen,
us up soon. I can't
Yeah.
wait for that day.
like we can have conversations about like being unhoused, having a precarious housing situation, and like thinking like maybe like a camper mobile home
Okay.
situation
Sure.
is the best
Sure.
option. That makes total sense to me. But no, what you're talking about is like someone with a mortgage who's
Yes.
like, you know what I need? I need a portable house. I just
A
take
whole ass
somewhere,
house.
and then I just sit outside. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah, and this person was like, yeah, and normally when we're out, we grill and stuff, and I'm like, oh, you take your grill, and they go, oh no, I have a grill that I bought just for the camper.
So stupid.
I thought, what are you doing?
What are you doing? This is so weird.
That is insanity to me.
You know what's awesome is like people have built all of this, but they don't move. And so you can just like take your car, which is weird that we even do that, right? It's like we need to have privatized forms of
Yeah.
transportation, and we use that for everything.
Correct.
You could just go and stay at one of these places and then go back to your house instead of buying. No, here's
Yeah.
the crazy thing, John. It's like I've bought my own private home. I've bought my own private mode of transportation. Then I've bought this third thing, which is like a weird, like a perverted Frankenstein
Yes.
monster of the two. And I just like fucking drive it around. It's
I spent
so
a
weird.
$250,000
Yeah.
on a house that I drive around, and then I park it back at my other house that's just in the ground already. Anyway, this has turned into
Yeah.
old guys talk
listen,
about
it's
RVs.
It's like it doesn't work well as a house. It doesn't work well as a car. It's a wildly inconvenient form of both of those.
We have become
and these
a Gallagher
people can't
act.
stop. And these people can't stop talking about how much they love it. I don't buy it. Yeah.
You drive in a parkway and you park on a driveway. That's what we've turned into. We've turned into Gallagher. All we need is the watermelon smasher. And remember his set was just a huge couch for no reason, and it had like big chips in it. That was a peak comedy.
Oh God.
Anyway, that's all I'd say
other
about the
things
episode.
from this
I think.
episode. Hey, remember when anti-vaxxers were weird? Were like weirdo lefties
Yeah,
instead
that was a
of
very
Trumpers?
strange moment, and now they're like a lot of people. Did you know that in Florida,
Please.
Did you know measles is coming back? That's a wild one.
Of course it is.
Leprosy is on the rise in Florida, which is fantastic. And also, people are now getting polio. When the polio vaccine came out, that guy was like lauded and won medals, and now there are people like getting polio.
John, my uncle had polio. Like, he lives with like the symptoms of having polio.
Yeah.
Like, it's wild. Like, people are like, yeah, polio, that thing that happened in the past when people just like drove RVs around all the time. Like, no, motherfuckers. Like, I have an uncle with a limp because of polio.
Yeah. Now it's back because
this is wild.
Doctors are just all quacks. We don't listen to them. I listen to what this Facebook influencer I love who sells
Who's
purses.
probably also a chiropractor. So
anyway, this has been old people.
I don't know. Like, no, but here's the thing: we're not. No. We are.
We've just turned
young,
into Seinfeld. That's all this is.
We are young, virile men complaining about what old people do. That's what we are.
We're old, and that's all I have.
Now,
Elroy's great in this episode.
What do you think?
What else?
What do you think? Like, a bunch of people in their 20s are getting RVs just because? No, like,
Probably.
John, these are no. This
Today
is not,
we saw a very lovely young couple pulling a camper today. I saw that with my own eyes.
No, I don't buy it. I mean, I trust that you saw that.
They're all dumb. Everybody's dumb. If you have a camper, you're cool, I guess. But
unless you're a patron, and then it's a fantastic investment.
It's the best thing I've ever. I would love to have one. Let me know. Send me pictures of it. It's really good. Thank you.
Other things. Have you watched Hotel Rwanda?
Oh, what a fascinating! It's a really funny flick.
They mention it in this episode. So
super.
I have not.
It's really funny. Don Cheadle's doing really hilarious comedic work in it. No, it's a terrifying movie. Very sad film. I would not stay at that hotel. Pull my collar like I'm a
now I
like
get
I'm
it.
a
Why?
comic.
No, this makes sense. All of the really old people we know who have campers, they all saw Hotel Rwanda.
That's it.
And that's
that
when they
makes
bought
sense.
campers.
They think every hotel is that.
That's,
I get it now. I get it. If I had to stay in the same hotel I stayed at in Raleigh, North Carolina, where I heard somebody get shot, I would also probably have a camper.
When did that happen?
As well, that was a while ago. I went to an art museum, and I had to spend the night. And throughout the evening, like somebody came and asked for drugs in my room, and
yeah, you told me.
The cop showed up because somebody got murdered. It was great.
Yeah.
Good times. He's thinking.
I can't think of the last time I stayed in a hotel.
Oh, really?
Or a camper. No,
I love hotels. I love hotels. You're not a big traveler, huh?
You and I talked about this. I love hotels as well. I want nothing more than to live in a hotel. So.
Oh, is that like the end goal when you're retired?
I want
nothing
to be
going on.
I want to be Royal Tenenbaum and just live in a hotel.
Live in a hotel. That sounds pretty fun. I would do it. I would do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a life goal. I think I like the idea of like walking downstairs and there's like Tom, like, hey Tom, how are you, Colin? Not too bad. Out to get my cup of coffee. Like
He's doing the whole thing.
I desperately want those interactions.
Could you live off of hotel coffee? You're a bit of a snob.
You see, this is the thing. You say that about me. I just like good coffee, but I don't discriminate. If I need coffee,
no, he does discriminate.
I do not.
Don't let him
see,
lie.
This,
yes,
no,
he does.
You're such.
Let me ask you: if you came over and I had a big tub of Folgers.
Yeah.
You gonna drink the drip Folgers?
No, I don't have to drink it, but I'm not gonna
like
say shit. No. See, this is
what about a Senka? You like Senka?
You're doing this thing where you frame
what
me
about
as this person
Cafe
who would
Bustelo?
Walk into a
Cafe Bustelo,
where I would just walk into a place and just start saying mean things about Folgers. I'll just say no, thank you if someone offers it, and then keep my mouth shut.
Let's say that you and I decide to go to IHOP. Okay.
Sure.
You can eat nothing there. Would you get the coffee at IHOP?
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, I'll drink that.
That's probably just Folgers. You just didn't see him make it.
It's all okay. Two things.
That's what I'm saying. Is you look at the can and go, "No, thank you."
No.
I'm a little bit. I have a little bit more wealth than that.
No.
Thank you very much, Folgers.
Again, says more about you than it does about me.
The best part of waking up.
We're in a diner.
Yeah.
And plus, they have the big diner mugs. John, I'm convinced there's something about those mugs that makes that coffee taste so much better than it really does. Yeah. And plus, I can eat eggs. I'll eat eggs.
God
I'll just
damn,
order
we've
8
gone a lot.
eggs.
We've gone off. We've lost the plot. Can we please move on to some of our segments?
I know what the plot is. You impugned my character, and I had to
apologize.
defend myself. You
That's
should.
what I should do. See, that's where we're at.
But you're a
I'm
bad
sorry
demon, so you won't.
that you got offended by me telling the truth.
No, okay. I was about to say transition. Any thoughts? Well, okay, yeah.
Huh?
Any thoughts about the end tags? It's weird.
Okay. Let's go there. Let's talk about it. I saw in your notes you put it. I think you should leave sketch. I don't disagree.
It feels that way. Okay.
I think if Tim Robinson had played this character, it would have been one of the funniest things of all time. But as it is profoundly sad.
Yes.
There's not really any comedy to it. They want it to be. There's like beats where you're supposed to laugh, but it's not. It's just a child has died, from what I gather, because his dad gave him a big kite, and so he took off in the air.
Yeah.
And died, and
Well,
now he wants to use
he's
a big
lost.
hand to try to reach him in heaven. I guess I don't know. It's not the best. It's not the best in tags. What did you think?
Yeah. Well, I completely agree with you. There's something about Tim Robbins. It would be as sad as this is, but it would also be incredibly funny. And
You did say Tim Robbins, which is the actor from Nothing to Lose
what's his name?
and Bull Durham. Tim Robbins' son. You almost got
Robbins'
there.
son. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. I was close. Yeah. It would have the same sad tone and sentiment, but he would say, you know what he would do? He would say a couple of the lines a little crooked.
It would be impossibly
Yeah.
funny. It would be so funny. It would be quoted all the time.
would,
Speaking
do
of,
this
what
thing with the
happened,
way he
what
turns
happened to
his
Tim
head.
Robbins? Is Tim
Yeah.
Robbins dead?
The
Didn't he marry
motivational
Susan
speaker?
Sarandon? Am I right about that? I think so.
No, I think you're thinking of Bill Pullman.
No. Bill Pullman, the president from Independence Day. No, Tim
They
Robbins.
all look alike to me.
They don't.
I don't mean
Tim
to
Robbins
be
is a
offensive, but,
giant man. He's like 7 foot
No,
tall.
yeah, you're thinking of the motivational speaker. No, the guy. No, he's dead. The guy who was Susan Sarandon. That was what was his name? Tim Heidecker. No.
Yeah, it's Tim Heidecker. No, it's Tim Robbins.
Yeah, Tim Robbins. He died in 2000 and oh no, he's still alive.
People that listen all the way to the end always get these best nuggets of us just making the fucking dumbest fools of ourselves. Tim Robbins is alive. Yes.
Who am I? Who's dead? Who am I thinking of?
A lot of people. Tim Conway, he died. He's dead.
No, it's not
from the
him.
Carol Burnett show. It's not him.
No.
Tim Duncan from the San Antonio Spurs. I think he's alive.
Tim Duncan's dead?
No, I think he's alive. I said.
Okay.
Oh, Tim the Toolman Taylor. Yeah, he got shot on live television. Anyway, let's move on, Colin.
I was thinking of, I'll tell you this much. I was thinking of the silliest thing today, John. I was thinking, what if Tim the Toolman Taylor wanted to like hum the X-Men 97 theme? There would be like these interesting little moments.
Please don't.
I'm not
No.
doing it. I was just
Please
thinking
don't do
about
it.
I'm not doing it. I was just
That
thinking
show's
about it.
so bad, by the way.
It's really the worst. Yeah. Although I will say this much, Al, even though I know the show, this is not the point, but I think you can read against the text to arrive at this point. Al is such a perfect encapsulation of what the best kind of masculinity should be. I truly believe that.
I don't disagree with you. I saw an interview with the woman that played Tim's wife. I think Patricia something's her name, and they asked, "Are we gonna have a reunion, like a Hulu reunion?"
Yeah.
And she said, "Well, the guy who played the oldest son, Zach, he's in jail." And I thought, okay, well, probably not then.
I like how she started there, like not the actor who plays Wilson is dead. Tim Allen doesn't seem interested. Our oldest son is in jail. That's where she started. Yeah,
she said he's a felon, and I thought, man, I don't think that
Jesus.
show's coming back, which is great.
No,
I hate
sorry.
Tim Allen now.
Yeah,
boy,
not
oh
a big
boy,
fan.
he's awful.
I wasn't a big fan in the 90s, I must confess.
I was a
So,
child, so I thought
yeah.
he was funny. He did the grunts, got his head stuck to a table. Classic. That's hilarious.
I did find that. Yeah, no.
Dyed his hands green.
I thought it was
Amazing.
funny and charming.
Amazing.
Yeah. But now
I was like
looking
9
back,
though, so yes.
Yeah, I mean, but now looking back, I think it's pretty clear it's just the worst kind of masculinity. But Al is spectacular. He's like sensitive and he's a good listener. And yeah, I love Al. He's great. John, let us transition to our segments. John,
Yes.
who makes the Dean's List for you?
Oh.
Who is your best performance?
Oh, I like Elroy a lot. He's very funny. When he has to contain his anger at the beginning because they've got everything plugged in,
Sure.
is phenomenal. I'm gonna go with Elroy. What about you?
I think Elroy is a fantastic choice. Abed? I think Abed's really good in this episode.
He does
I
a
think
lot. It's his episode,
He
yeah.
does a lot. It's really his. And this is, to be quite frank with you, one of the last Abed episodes, because there's only 3 episodes left after this. They're all really, really good. Correct. John, I need you to check the syllabus. I know we're getting close to the end of the semester, but I still think it's important that you know the course policies. So tell me, what's your favorite bit of metatextual referencing and intertextual play?
Oh, I don't know. Oh man. I like the I think I like the idea of the butterfly effect there at the end with the post-apocalyptic thing. I think I'll go with that. What about you?
Yeah, no, I think that's mine too. Just the and I was just thinking about this. T2 is also a road trip movie.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of roads in it.
So many roads and tripping. It's really fantastic. But not like drug tripping, but like taking a trip. That's what people who this is an RV thing. If you're part of the RV community.
Yeah, you'll get it when you get a little bit
tripping.
older.
It's tripping. Yeah. Yeah. So no, mine is I think something similar. You know, this use of the apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic genre and how the episode really suggests that Abed just failed to recognize that he was in the wrong genre for most of this episode. So, okay, cool. John, best lines.
There's a couple that I loved a lot. One is when Elroy says, "I'll drive my house off a cliff." That was very funny to me. When the Dean and Jeff are arguing and Jeff says something like, "We want to give a hand to your brain." And the Dean's like, "No, we want to give your brain a hand. You're just trying to make it sound stupid." That was very, very funny. And then there's this line that I didn't write it down. I know you did, where Elroy's talking about this like electric orgy of pluggable devices. That was so fucking funny. And then the way Britta talks at the end, when she's like the futuristic, she's so whacked
Space
out of her
Elder
head.
Britta, yeah.
That's really fucking great. I love that a lot. I love that a lot. Go hit me with yours, please.
Okay. Yeah, it's me, the one you put on hold. See where that got you? That's either an Annie or a Frankie line. I don't remember. Way to make this about justifying your unremarkable sensibility. I think maybe Jeff says that to Abed. I'm not sorry. I'm not happy to be back. What the hell was that? I don't know. I think that's an exchange between Jeff and Abed.
It was,
maybe.
yes,
I'm not
yes.
sorry. I'm not happy to be back. What the hell was that? I think Frankie says the what the hell was that? Why are you all looking at each other like that? And where are each of your phones now? You know, I'm starting to suspect the unthinkable. Namely, that in spite of all we've experienced, that a cartoonish, vampiric orgy of personal devices is somewhere in the RV sucking away our remaining battery.
That's so
I only
good.
draw limited comfort from the fact that no one is running to unplug anything. Yeah, it's this fantastic monologue. It's very, very good. Okay, this is a Dean line. If I'm a child, you're a child abuser. Not cool, Andy. Nice uncontrollable question mark, Britta. That's something the dean says when I think Britta says, "We're sorry and we love you."
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Here it is. I'm Space Elder Britta. What are you guys talking about?
she's so like blank faced. It's so funny. What are you guys talking about?
And then finally we'll end with this Elroy line. I'd be lying if I said I didn't poop.
So good. It's so good.
Oh,
man.
John, that is our conversation for Season 6, Episode 10 of Community Basic RV Repair and Palmistry. John, we have a Patreon page.
Oh, yes, we do. We did an episode where I did the theme park for Community, turned into like a sort of Halloween Horror Nights haunted house meta retrospective horror existential crisis park
With daddy issues.
With daddy issues, yes. Colin did some of his own attractions there. It was a really good time. I highly recommend checking out the Patreon to listen to that one. If you want to get all the exclusive contents, the link is in the show notes. $3 a month gets you all the exclusive bonus episodes. Above that, $7 a month, you become producer of the show. We thank you every episode. There's only 3 left where we can say thank you and say your name out loud if that's something you want done. Above that, you get a shirt, a sticker, all the content. And at the $7 tier, you also get a sticker of the show. So, that being said, Colin. Oh, shit, I forgot. Above the t-shirt tier. I've done this every episode. And I forgot to do it. Above the t-shirt tier. Yeah. You can come to my house, and we will watch Terminator 2 together. Yeah. Judgment Day. We can cosplay. I will dress up as Sarah Connor. She's great. She's got that tank top on. Linda Hamilton.
Yeah,
she's fantastic.
She, I think she lifted a few weights in preparation for that movie.
I could steal a cop outfit. You could be the T-1000.
Is that what you want me to be? Yeah, that's how I run. So
you run like Robert Patrick as a T-1000?
I do. The first time
he looks like he always has to take a shit. That's what he looks like when he's running. Like he's concentrating so hard on not shitting himself.
Doesn't breathe, doesn't open his mouth. It's just
nothing.
Mouth closed. Yeah.
It's a great movie. Great film.
It's stunning film. Much better than the sequels. So
they made sequels?
They did. No, it's
not in my head.
Not in my head. Yeah. Oh, the head canon is strong. John, yeah, producers, we have producers. Thank you to Anthony, Katana, Crindy, Rachel, Kate, Daniel, Lars, Rob, Robin, Rob, Jeff, and Andrew. And John's right. It's the first link in the show notes. The second link is to our Threadless page. If you would like to purchase Hop-Ons podcast merchandise. And John, if someone were so inclined as to rate and review the podcast, what would you say? What would I say?
Here in our golden days, it would be lovely. Ratings and reviews do help the show get noticed. And I think, and I don't know how like the logistics work with hosting costs, but I think the show will stay on. We just can't put new episodes on unless we pay for hosting. I think older episodes don't go away because I've closed several shows and they're still out there. So I think that's how it works. I don't know.
Yeah, and my plan was just to, not that we need to talk about this now, it's fine, whatever, just to reduce our hosting fees to the smallest amount possible in case we wanted to record
talk about Mission Impossible 8,
which is happening. Yeah, which is happening.
In case you didn't know that. But yeah, so if you rate and review the show, it does help us it bumps us up, and we would love to have more ratings and reviews. Why we never got picked up by a network is beyond me. It does upset me. I listen to some shows on networks and they're so fucking terrible, and our show's not. What's going on? Anyway,
well, John, it might be a good time for us to get out because, as I see it, the podcasting medium is like dying quickly. So,
I've heard that it is a bit of an adpocalypse right now for most podcasters. That's what I understand. That advertisers are just pulling, because it's not there anymore. Unless you're the New York Times or Joe Rogan, love that fucking guy, then you're not making any money.
Yeah, no, we never, I think, had any delusions of grandeur here, but everything I've read, not just recently, but in the last couple of years, and maybe for the longest time, podcasting was never actually this lucrative thing everyone thought it would be, unless you were, as you said, unless you were Joe Rogan or Serial or one of these extremely popular podcasts, or if you were a podcast attached to a network that was then attached to a media company that had all of these other sources of revenue. I mean, I think about, for example, like, I don't know if this is still true or not, but like Amazon and its music service like doesn't actually make money, but what it does do is prevent other possible subscription services from making more money. So if you have this like market, this idea of how markets work and a limited number of listeners, if you can cut into your competition, then at the very least that has negative consequences on the perception of your competition, which only benefits you. So yeah, I think unfortunately podcasting, you're right, there's a few unicorns, but aside from those unicorns, it's really just I mean, we're extremely fortunate that we have patrons who cover our hosting fees and have covered them for years. So we've been able to produce this without really spending our own money. And I mean, we're not making really any money, but we're also not really paying for anything. And that's always nice. So
we'll love to hear the dulcet tones of my hillbilly voice. You're welcome. You're welcome out there in podcast land.
Worth every penny.
3 episodes left, and then we'll go from there. So for the Hop-Ons podcast, my name is John Phelps.
My name is Colin Cox.
Colin, I will see you in a weekish or so. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I could have diarrhea. All right, bye, everybody.